Hi, do you want a developer console for your game? Something like this or this? If you do, then it's pretty easy to make one. I'm gonna make this in C++ with my own engine, but I'm gonna try to keep it language agnostic. Just gonna give you the concepts and hopefully you can integrate it into whatever engine or language you're using. So, I'm gonna make a console CPP file. You don't really need to make a file, but let's just make one. And also namespace, another thing that you don't need to make. Okay, so we're gonna start off with an update function. It's gonna take the delta time, and we're just gonna call that and console update with delta, which in my case is gonna be something like game frame time. Okay, not game, platform data. There we go. The way we're gonna do this is the following. If this is the window, when the console is open, we want something that looks kind of like this. This is where you type. This is the feedback, basically. The buffer where the messages get sent, if necessary. And we don't want it to instantly appear, we want it smooth. So to do that, I'm gonna say static float. I prefix every global variable with y for clarity. Again, you don't have to do that. So we're gonna have the current, which is the basically where this point right here is. It's gonna start at 0, then the target. Then to know if the console is open, that controls whether you can type into it or not. We're gonna check g target y is greater than 0. Then we're gonna move the current towards the target. That's gonna be current y equals lerp g current y g target y delta times 10. And then if we press, let's go with F3, if it is open, then we're gonna close it. How do we close it? We just set target y to 0. Else, if it is closed, we set target y to 0.5. I'm gonna be working with percentages of the window height as opposed to pixel coordinates. I feel like this case makes it a little bit more convenient. Yep. Also, if the way I'm doing this lerp function is gonna approach target y, but it's never gonna actually reach it. So we're gonna do something like if the difference between target y minus g current y, can't type, is less than, let's go, 0.001, then current y equals target y. Okay. That little bit of a problem there, and it compiles now. So now let's draw this. So the position is going to be 0, 0 actually, because you can see, we always want this. So this is x0, y0, so that's just 0, 0. This is irrelevant. And now the size. The size, we want the full width, so that's going to be, in my case, base resolution x. Normally you would call this window width. And this, same thing, but times the current y. Then we want a color. I use this website for colors because, anything art related is not for me. I don't have that skill. So there we go. Let's see. Now if we press F3, we're a console. Except that I'm drawing it with the origin being the center. So that X I specify is the center of the rectangle rather than the top left. In this case, we do not want that, so this is just something I have to do. But I'm telling the drawRect function that I want this with the origin at the top left. Now, there we go. So now to do this little thing, the area where we type in, we want something a little bit different. So we can see that this is going to be the target y minus a little bit, whatever size we decide this should be. So let's just make a constant input height. Let's go with 64. And then we want input y to be basically this thing, the bottom, minus the input height. So now if we do input y, same width, whole screen, and for this we want input height. Let's change the color. Let's get this one, and everything else is the same. Oh, the layer, this is just, you know, the C ordering, which of these two appears in front of the other. In our case, I want this to appear in front of the other. This is complaining that it wants to float. There we have it. So now, there we go. We got the input area. Very good. Next thing should be, we want to type in here. So, just gonna make a variable. I'm also doing everything global, but you don't have to. You can make a struct or whatever. And also, I didn't say this, but I made this little test game just so we have something to change with the console. For example, the gravity. That's what I'm gonna do. So yeah, we're gonna go char text gtext, say 1024. That seems plenty. And then how long this text is, how many characters are in it. So right here, if the console is open, we should be able to type. So we're gonna need to get character input, essentially, like uppercase A is coming in or lowercase z is coming in, that kind of thing. The way I do that, it's going to be the index, is going to be the actual thing, and this is where the characters are stored, the events are stored. So for me, it's going to be char events, I believe. Logic char events? I don't remember. I have to look that up. Char events, right. So we need to check. Mostly we want to allow every character, ASCII character, except for new line and backspace. So if we find a new line or return, we're gonna do something. We don't know what yet. We find the backspace, we're gonna do something. Else we want to add to that text we have. So text, we're gonna go at text length. So if it's empty, it's gonna be the first character, and we want to set that to the incoming character. And then we want to increase this. We also want to draw that text, so that's gonna be the text, which is text. Only draw it if the length is greater than 0. Otherwise, doesn't really make sense. Then the position. The position is gonna be input y. And on the x, we probably want 0. You could add some padding, but not necessary. Then once again, the C index or C ordering, whatever you want to call it. I call it layer. That's 20, so it appears on top of everything. Font size, let's make a constant for that. Font size equals 64. Make it constant expression because we can. Then we got the color, let's make it white. Then we want whether it's centered or not. We don't want it centered. And then we want game font. There we go. That's just the font. Now, if I type, it works. However, I cannot delete and I cannot press return. So, first delete. That's pretty easy. If we delete, we basically want to go backwards one. So, lower the length and then put in a 0. And also I forgot, we also want a 0 here after increasing it. So, you know, C++ strings have to be null terminated, or C strings rather. So with that, we should be able to just delete, and we are, except that if I try to delete again, I'm gonna go to negative and I'm gonna crash. So we actually need to check for text length greater than 1, greater than 0. There we go. So that's the basic stuff done. We can type, we can delete. Now we should do some commands. So for commands, I think I want a structure like this, something called command data. It has a name and it has a function that I don't know the type yet, but it has a function. Let's call it command func. Now what's the type? The type is going to be a function that returns void. The name is, say, command func pointer, and it takes in a string. Maybe a string length too. Let's say it doesn't. Let's just go with a string. So now we know the type of this, command func. And now we want an array of these things. One element for each command we have. So let's go const expression, static. Actually, I like to do it in reverse. S command data, C command data, semicolon. And now we can make a command. Let's start with the simplest command that does something, which is quitting, exiting the game. So let's say it's called quit, and the function command func is quit, which we haven't made yet, but we will right now. Static void quit takes a character, takes a string, and all it does is exit. See if that compiles. It does. So now when we press return, one of the things we want to do is delete the input. So let's set the length to 0, and then let's place a 0 to make it null terminated. Let's see if that works. I'm going to press return, and there it goes. But before we do that, we're going to say something like execute command, and we're going to give it the text length and the text. Let's make this function. There we go. Now we want to loop through every command we have. So that's gonna be array count, C command data. Let's go S command data, data equals C command data, for a little bit of a shortcut so we don't have to type this and then the brackets every time. That'd be annoying, so let's go like that. Now if, let's say command length equals strlen data name. If the command length is greater than text length, then there is no way it could possibly match, so we're just going to continue. Otherwise, we're going to str and cmp, which basically is a string comparison, but only of the first n characters. So then data name, text, and command length. We only want that many comparisons, and I believe you have to do equals 0. So if this happens, it means we found the command. So now we're gonna say data command func. We just call it, and what do we pass it? The text. And now if we did that, you can imagine if you have some command that we're gonna have, like set gravity, for example, 5. When you are inside the set gravity function and you check the string, you don't want to see set gravity. That's implicit because you are in the set gravity function. So obviously that's just useless information. What you actually want is this. So to pass that in, if I just pass text, I'm gonna get set gravity space 5. I just want space 5, or maybe not even the space. So that's going to be plus command len, that skips the set gravity, and then plus 1 to skip the space. Optional, but it's fine. When this happens, we're going to say found command equals true and break. At the end of this function, if we didn't found the command, we need to say something. To do, complain, we didn't find it. And we're going to need that variable. Okay. So this may work now. If I just go F3 quit, there we go. Command executed. So that's the simplest type of command, just a command with no arguments. We're gonna make a command a little bit more involved called setGravity, as I said. The function is gonna be setGravity. setGravity. And what we want to do in here basically is parse a float, right? And if we didn't parse it, then to do complain. If we did parse it, then game gravity equals something value and say success, something like this. This is the kind of structure we're going for. So you're gonna need a parse float function. The way I want to do this is, you probably have a way to do this in your engine or whatever you're using. But I'm thinking I want, whether it worked or not, then the value, and then the end pointer. The end pointer is in the case that we may have a function like set 2 params or whatever that takes 2 arguments like this. So when I parse one float, this float, I want to know where the string ended, so I can start parsing this one if necessary. So that's why I'm making this structure. So I'm gonna make a function that returns us one of those. Takes a string. So in here, now we know that this should be parse float. Let's call it FP for short. I'm gonna give it a text. If FP not success, then we complain and return. Otherwise, FP value. There we go. Okay, so what does this look like? Well, let's say cursor equals text. For now, we want to skip all the white space because that's just unnecessary. Gets in the way. So while the cursor equals space, we're gonna advance it. Now we should have a number. So we want to support decimal points, so we're gonna say found dot equals false, then while true, character equals what's on the cursor, then if it's number, it's a very simple function, I'm not gonna show it, we're gonna say found number equals true, which is yet another boolean. You can probably do this way better than what I'm doing, but if it works, it works. Else, if we find the dot, so that, if we already found the dot, that means we have something like 5 point or dot dot 3. That's not reasonable. So we're gonna say that's bad. Let's just return result, which I didn't make yet. Parse float result 0 initialized. So success is false by default. That's what we want. So we return it. That fails. Found dot equals true. Otherwise, we just break, right? If we don't find a dot and we don't find the number, there's nothing that could work or nothing that we're handling. We're not handling negative sign, but you could do that. So at the end of this, if we found the number, then that means the function worked. So result success equals true. Also, I need to increase cursor here. I also want to increase text, actually. Screw the white space. Okay. Then result value equals A to F text, and then result end pointer equals cursor, because cursor is now the first character that we didn't care about, so where we ended, so that's the return, the end pointer that we may use. So there we go, return result. Success. Double to float, right, we need to cast this. And this probably is there is a standard library function that would do all of this, probably, but I rarely use the standard library. prefer to do things myself. It's useful for learning. Okay, so let's just print the value that we get. See what happens. See if this is working at all. So set gravity 555, and there we go. We got a 555. Now I actually set this already. So now when I try to jump, you will see that my jump is absolute garbage because I set the gravity very high. If I set it to 0.01, I basically just float. Set it again to 100 and I fall very fast. Nice. So that's the basics. The only thing we are missing now is actually displaying some feedback. So we're gonna say add message to buffer, perhaps. Format text. This is just like a sprintf kind of thing. Gravity set to %f. Game gravity. Here we're gonna say expected float. And in here we want to say again format text. Did not find command. Let's just say command not found. So no format text. So we need to make this function. It doesn't exist. So static void add message to buffer. So essentially what I want here is when we add a message to this, it should appear here. Then if we add a new message, this one should move up and the new one should appear here. So the way I'm going to do it is I'm going to have an array, and the first element is this one, the second element is this one, and so on. So what I want is to insert elements at the beginning of the array, as opposed to what you normally do, which is the end. Now that's slower, but for this is irrelevant because we will only have like 16 or whatever. They won't even fit on the screen. So no need to worry about performance for this thing. So this is my generic array that I have. Let's call this buffer. I'm gonna have to make a wrapper around a string because I cannot just give it an array in here. I would love to just do this, but I can't do that. So I'm gonna have to wrap it. Let's call this string and char data 128. That should be enough. Great, so message. And this function is going to be extremely simple. It's just going to be g buffer insert at the first position, the str, which I have to make, string copy str data message. There we go. That should work. And now we need to display this. So I'm going to go here. I'm going to loop through each of this. For each value stri str g buffer. This is going to be str data. This is going to be input y minus. So if we use the input y, we would be here. We want to be 1 above that. So we're going to say minus I plus 1 times font size. And that's pretty much it, I believe. Except it's not called y, it's called stri. This is just a loop. I just have like a macro for looping over this thing, which is a wrapper over basically like a list with a fixed size. Yeah, you could just do normal loop. So let's see. Let's type ASD, command not found, correct. Let's type set gravity, expected float. Let's type set gravity 77, gravity set to 77. That's pretty much all the basic thing. Of the basic things. That's just a functional console and very simple to make. Now, as an exercise for you, you could implement a few things. For example, blinking cursor, right? So like in VS Code, you should be able to see where you're typing. Also, you should be able to move around on the thing that you typed. So currently we can only type to the end and remove from the end. It would be nice to be able to move around. So that's something you could do. Another thing you could do that's very simple is instead of opening the console up to the middle of the screen, if you press Ctrl F3 instead of just F3, you could open it to the bottom of the screen. So it's basically full screen console. And you could also do auto completion. It's a little bit more difficult, but you can imagine that you're typing here. You could loop through every command that you have and display the closest to this string, the command with the closest name to this string, display it below, for example, and then if you press tab, you replace this text with the command name. Those are all reasonable things that you may want to do. But the basic functionality is this. Adding a command now is just doing this, changing the name to something, changing the function to something. They don't have to be the same name, by the way, but I made it the same name. And that's pretty much it. So yeah, thanks for watching. Bye.